a goal. A wonderful finish. Cody Gakpo. Darwin Núñez makes it 2-0. Gakpo 3. Anfield delight. Salah. Good night and good luck. Here is Darwin Núñez. It is 5-0. Salah. It is 6. Roberto Firmino. It's in. It's 7.
An extraordinary, unprecedented scoreline between Liverpool and Manchester United. United still in third place in the table. They're on 49 points. Liverpool are closing in on Tottenham. They're 3 points behind them now with a game in hand, and they've significantly improved their goal difference, which, should it remain tight to the end of the season, could be significant. Newcastle slipped down into 6th place, but they do have at least 1 or maybe 2 games in hand on the teams above them. With me and Wrighty in the studio today, Darren Lewis is here, Nadim Manua is here. We're going to start by talking about events at Anfield. I think it's a really difficult one to analyse because it was all kinds of chaos. But there are a few elements. One is the first half, which is open to proper analysis. I think the second half, which I think is all about emotion, and then what that means to all the teams. But first of all, it just doesn't feel real. It feels like a bit of a blur.
But that's what can happen in the Premier League in that fixture, especially. You can't go into that fixture thinking, oh, because we're doing this and because they're not doing that. You have to go into that fixture, and that's Man United against Liverpool, and you have to be ready for that. And I think for the first half, you could see where, it was okay. The second half was, for me, as much. I love seeing goals, as you can imagine, Kels. But it was surprising. It was surprising.
Surprise! I was slightly surprised.
It was very surprising.
Did you raise an eyebrow?
Well, the thing is, I was watching with I had 2 Liverpool fans and a Man United fan, and you can imagine what that was like for the Man United fan, because after a couple, they kind of like going to a place where, you know what, I'm not even going to tease you anymore, bro, because it isn't funny. Because I know it's like to see a team and be on the end of that kind of thrashing, but it was, for me, Liverpool saying, for me, the fire ain't out in us yet. We've still got more to give, and they're coming back, and you have to expect that from a Liverpool. But Man United have to ask a lot of questions of some of those players, especially that second half. Yeah,
that feels like, although it isn't chronologically the place to start, that second half feels like the biggest talking point of the game. The fact that Manchester United did, just at 3-0 down, seemed to disappear from the game, and Liverpool smelled blood.
Yeah, exactly. It's a capitulation. I think the first half itself, I thought that was a good game. It felt like it could have finished 0-0, but that's because, it's Liverpool playing at home, United trying to find something there for the first time in a long time. And at half-time, 1-0 down, I thought United were going to come back and sort of really hit the ground running. And I was so wrong, yet again. There's a goal, there's another goal, there's another goal. And I'll be honest, as I look back at the result, Liverpool beat Man United at Anfield isn't a surprise. No. But that capitulation at the end is the thing that's really shocking, because at some point, you've got tactics and so on. Yeah. But there's an element of football which just requires character. And when it's not, United went down to 10 men. It was still 11 versus 11. And wherever you go, given the standards that they have, there's no way you concede 7 goals. This is an historic moment that they'll never be able to forget, unfortunately for them. And like I say, there's so many questions to be asked, because I think I was going to say before the show, as you look back at that game from a Ten Hag perspective, sometimes you can look at tactics and try and figure out what went wrong. But he's going to be looking back at all those goals and looking at seeing the people that gave up. And if you give up, that's not something that he would have expected. No. That's not something that he will ever hope to see again. And there'll be players, I imagine, who played in that game yesterday who might be playing the games to come, because they've shown a character trait which will not be required from them should they want to be successful this year.
Because this is what the story was around Manchester United heading into the game, that they were resilient, that they were tough, that they did have strong, they were mentally strong. It's not what they showed in the game. And the converse was true of Liverpool, that you saw the second half against Real Madrid, where they capitulated in a similar manner to Manchester United. They're a bit weak, they're a bit soft. And what we saw in the second half was the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, all of those descriptions of United, you could argue they were justified. They'd only lost 2 out of 32 matches after they were beaten 6-3 by City in the derby. And so there were a lot of people feeling they're on the way back. They've won a a trophy. And there is an argument for saying that in some games they got away with it. But if you look at some great teams, you look at the Invincibles, there were some games that they got away with it. You know, there's sometimes in title-winning sides, City have had games where they found a way either to win or to grab a share of the points. That's okay. That's
they done it with Newcastle the other day.
Well, exactly. But
and we'll get to Arsenal in a few minutes.
But I think as far as United are concerned, Nedum's absolutely right. I think he'll get a reaction for sure. They've got big things to play for this season. They've got a top 4 to play for, the Europa League and an FA Cup. The players who gave up. And when he starts to plan for next season, 1 or 2 players won't be in that squad.
Absolutely.
1 or 2 players will be out of the team and would be squad members. And I will be staggered if there is not a new captain.
There has to be.
Rather than later.
Has to be a new captain.
So is he a symptom or is he a cause of the problems at Manchester United? Bruno Fernandes.
Listen, I've written already about this for the Daily Mirror today.
For those who haven't read it.
For those who haven't read it, Mirror Football. Or you
Always
can get one at your
always
local news. But I think as far as Bruno Fernandes is concerned, that's one of the worst performances I've seen from a captain in any game.
Yes.
At any level.
Yeah.
And I'll defer to the chaps because they've got that real world experience of playing with captains. But I think as far as Fernandes is concerned, for any leader, you find out the most about them in your difficult moments. And if you look at the history of Manchester United, they've had some exceptional captains in difficult moments. If you look at one of their finest hours of the last 30 years, the 1999 Champions League winning journey, and you look at the moments in that journey when they were behind and they fought back and they found a way to win.
Yeah, Juventus
comes to mind straight away.
Yeah.
And you look at the characters involved in that, not even the captain, but just individuals in that team. You see more leadership in them than you saw in Fernandes yesterday. Go through what Fernandes did. He tried to feign injury. Because I don't just want to throw at him and say it was a bad performance. I'll give you specifics. Tried to feign injury when Ibrahima Konate put his hand on his chest, went down clutching his face. He tried to win a penalty against Alisson. Again, if you look at it, it tells its own story of the manner, but in terms of the manner that he tried to do that. Worst of all, he laid his hands on an assistant referee. Unforgivable from any captain at any level. We try to protect our officials in this sport, and yet you've got the captain of Manchester United putting his hands on an assistant referee. It's just unforgivable. So I think, and then of course he's waving his arms in the air. He appeared, and I have to phrase this correctly because I don't know what was going through his mind, but he appeared to be suggesting that he wanted to come off when Ten Hag made a substitution. Now, I don't know that to be true, but that has been assessed as he was doing it. And I just think as far as Fernandes is concerned, lots of people would have wanted him to be the one who was leading in the trenches. And as it was, he was the person you could rely on least in the United team yesterday.
I think when the capitulation of the team, like you mentioned, it's a reflection of the captain. I think when I saw Bajcetic, is that how you say it? Bajcetic go past him and he stopped. Just stopped. That was for me was the last straw, because when you look at his histrionics, man, he's somebody that he wouldn't last. And I don't like talking about our dressing rooms back then, but a character like that would not be able to flourish and do what he's doing on the pitch that openly in the dressing rooms that I was in, because that would be sorted out on the training field.
And that's relevant because you're talking about title-winning dressing rooms and what is required and what kind of personality trait, as much as anything, is required in a title-winning team.
And this is why I say,
just to ask you, I mean, and yourself, Nedum, it's not about title-winning dressing rooms. It's any dressing room. I mean, leadership requires.
The captain is a special person in there. That's why I'm saying, like, I was fortunate enough to have someone like Tony Adams. There was no shirking in that dressing room with anything. And, you know, when you watch someone like, that's why you're watching someone like Roy Keane looking at a captain of Man United putting in a performance like that must hurt him deeply. What he's had to go through just to get to that accolade, to do that, to see a Man United captain playing as if he's got the world on his shoulders and not inspiring his teammates to try and salvage something. We saw in that game, you get to a point in the game, Nathan, you may have witnessed it yourself where, you know what, this game's gone for us. We need to just like show something to the fans. We need to show something for ourselves. So when we look back on this, we can say, well, we've done this and we've done that. People say, I'll try and win the second half or something. But like to see the captain like that, he cannot be. The way that Ten Hag is setting that team up, he doesn't fit in the mould of Ten Hag and how he wants his team to go forward.
Yeah, so for me, like I'll offer some semblance of balance as such, because the way he is as a player in terms of his the way he carries himself, like that works very well when you're winning. You know, the United fans are starting to connect more with him. And I see some of that, you know, some of the softer side of things where he's going down. I don't love that, but he's still having a big impact in terms of the way that the team play. But I think sometimes for me as a captain and as a leader, you lead by example.
Yeah.
And that example matters more so when things aren't going well, because you set the tone.
Yeah.
If the captain decides to drop the standard himself, then everybody else is in a position where, well, if this is acceptable, then this is what we can do.
Yeah.
And I think some of the things which he did in the game yesterday, the worst one for me was when he gave up on Bajcetic.
Yeah.
Because that, for me, is pathetic. You know, like, nobody wants to be on the field losing as badly as you are to your biggest rival.
Yeah.
But you still have to play. You still have to stop it. You still have to help your teammates. And when he does that, yes, you can be frustrated. But, like, that's when people go and just start being more physical in the game. Like, at least just go and do that.
Do that, yeah.
Just don't stop. The moment you stop in football, when it's like that,
when
it's
that
just too
happens,
much for me.
when that happens, Nedum, do players within the dressing room basically have an opinion, shall we say, on that?
Yeah, people have an opinion based upon that, but then I don't know how they were dealing with themselves in the game as well. And I mentioned before about Ten Hag looking back at the goals. So it's double-sided coin. So Liverpool, when they're 3-4-0 up, they're breaking from a corner and everybody's running forward because you've got the wind at your back. But look and see how many United players are running at the same speed, how many people are committed to running back as well, because in that moment you have to run back to stem the flow. But if, say, your captain's not going, other players aren't going, then what they're saying is it doesn't matter, they're going to leave it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And those sort of character traits, they don't appear massive and they're quite sort of subtle in terms of watching the game. But if you do it once, you do it again. And who's to say that they won't do it again as the season progresses and the games matter even more? And I hope that Ten Hag's seen it and he tries to address it, because even though he's captain, that's great. But if the standards are the standards, then that's unacceptable.
I think his histrionics have kind of kicked on a bit more since Ronaldo's not in the dressing room. I feel maybe he kind of like would look across and see Ronaldo maybe not act as like openly as that, because you think to yourself, who do you think you are acting like that? He seemed to quieten himself down a bit when Ronaldo was there. And now that Ronaldo's gone, maybe he feels like he's the boss of that dressing room now. And I look in that dressing room and I'm trying to think of what player will walk up to him and eyeball him to put him in his place. And being the captain, you yourself will be being out of order approaching the captain like that. But like, it looks to me like that captain needs it, but who's going to do that? You know, there's a lot of problems for me when you look at that performance from him and the players that he's got around him, Kels, because I don't know who's going to actually bring that guy in line. Because
what we saw from the first half was that in terms of ability, in terms of pure football, there wasn't that much between the sides for the first 45 minutes. Liverpool get the goal at the end, but at that stage, the game still felt very much in the balance. So in a football sense, there wasn't much between them. The difference came in the second half when it was about that sort of mental approach. And you said it, Nadim, you know, that if they do it once, then there's a chance that they're going to do it again. And as much as they have improved in that aspect under Eric Ten Hag, and they do have that record of the last 30-odd games, there is a side that in this season did lose 4-0 against Brentford, that did let six in against Manchester City. And even up to that point, conceded lots of chances against Leicester, conceded chance against West Ham, conceded decent chances against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final. And I wonder if that goes so deep at the moment that it's going to take a little while for the opposite to take effect, that strength of character to take effect.
I agree. I mean, listen, the profile of this fixture means that any defeat is going to be forensically analysed in the coming days. But this, yesterday, I mean, you got two stories, the resurgence of Liverpool, three stories: the resurgence of Liverpool, the trouble with Manchester United, and Fernandes. And to be fair to Fernandes, and you're right, in the interest of balance, he has a great reputation behind the scenes. Lots of people talk about his willingness to embrace everyone and make everyone feel included. And
but maybe that's part of his ploy. That's part of the plan, I should say.
What, being nice to people?
No, yeah, being nice so that when he's out there, they say, yeah, but he's always really nice.
Yeah.
No, that's part of it. I'm telling you, it must be.
And it is, listen, when you talk about all the great captains in Premier League history, you talked about Bruce, you talk about Keane, you talk about John Terry as well, who isn't just a fantastic player and somebody that you can rely on when the going gets tough, but he inspires other people around him, improves them to such an extent that towards between 2005 and 2010-12, they could manage themselves.
Yeah.
They were a magnificent football team, full of warriors. And I think in terms of United, that you have to now look beyond the facade, if you like, of the results. The results, it is a results business. But clearly, if this team has it within them to lose by such big scorelines, there is a fundamental issue there.
Yeah.
And it means that one or two of the talents can stay, but one or two of the players who may be flattered to deceive, if you like, or make decent contributions here and there, but aren't quite warriors, leaders, people you can depend on in a difficult moment, they've got to go.
Yeah, man.
The third part of the stories of that game that we haven't talked about yet is Liverpool and the positives from their point of view. And more, I mean, look, Manchester United, as we say, switched off mentally in the it looked as though they switched off mentally in the second half of that game. But at the same time, Liverpool had to smell that opportunity and they had to take those chances. There are young players in there. There are new players in that Liverpool squad for whom that will have been huge in terms of their development.
Yeah, because that's as close as I've seen to Liverpool when they're in their pomp with the Salah, Mane and Firmino, and the way they were playing up front there, and then you've got the energy of Bajcetic and Harvey Elliott with the young legs and that, and then you've got them being able to close them down and win the ball in those areas, and they're breaking at pace from like an opposing corner, and that it was back. They were back, and when you look, Gakpo, Nunez, who I always knew, when you look at his goal XG and everything, like he wasn't reaching it simply because maybe he chose a different way to take the chance. He was still trying to finish.
But you said that on the show before. You always said he's going to score goals. He's still doing exactly
what he does. He works hard. He tries to finish cute or whatever it is. He gets in there, he heads it. So you're knowing at some stage when it clicks for him, it's going to happen. Mo Salah, especially what I saw him do to Martinez, Lisandro Martinez, who I really do like as a defender, he is back. He's back to Mo Salah. He was sharp. He was quick. You know what I mean? He was passing. He was doing all the stuff. And you think to yourself, this Liverpool, somebody's lit the flame again. They found it. So it's up to Liverpool because we saw what happened with Madrid. You have to say that was another one I watched and said, oh my God, what's going on? But we see that can happen. But what we also see with Liverpool and what they're capable of doing is that they've been, for me, the fire's lit and they're ready to go again. Now it's going to be interesting to see how Liverpool move from here. Because that was a very, very, for me, very impressive annihilation of a team. In the six goals in the second half and smelt the blood and finished them. It was beautiful to watch in a funny sort of way.
As I saw somebody refer to it, 4 of their front 3 scored. Because Roberto Firmino got his goal as well in the week that he said that he was going to be leaving Liverpool. And this sense of the evolution of the front 3, which is probably the pertinent word to use, given that includes Darwin, with Nunez and with Salah now, and with Gakpo in there. Yes, with those 3 in there. Firmino came on, he's on his way out. There's Jota to come back into that, come up Diaz to full fitness, and we saw him against Wolves. Diaz is yet to come back to full fitness. And it suddenly looks, from one game, or maybe you can take the Wolves game, the first half against Real Madrid into consideration there. But it suddenly looks as if that major surgery that was required for Liverpool might just be a bit of keyhole.
Exactly.